Hey guys, thank you for coming to watch this video. That means you're doing your work for today, so I super appreciate it. We're continuing with our review. We're going to start a Target C review, and then we will go into Target C all of next week. We will do Target D the week after that, and then you guys will take your test. And so we are going to take a trip down memory lane to rationalizing the denominator. You do have notes on this on Target D, or I'm sorry, it's Target C day 1 in your notes packet. You do have notes on this, but it's been a while, so I just wanted to go through this. When you rationalize the denominator, the issue with rationalizing the denominator is we are not allowed to have a rational. This is a rational, a radical. We call it both. We are not allowed to have a rational number in the denominator, which the denominator is the bottom part of a fraction. So we have to get rid of it. So in order to get rid of it, you are going to follow these steps every single time. Just the simplifying at the end will be a little bit different for each problem. So in order to get rid of the equation, or I'm sorry, in order to get rid of the rational number in the denominator, we are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the issue. And I say the issue because the issue is we are not allowed to have a rational number in the denominator. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. I'm going to zoom in so it's easier to write. You will probably want to write this on a separate piece of paper. It's super short, so follow along. So we're going to have 2 divided by the square root of 5. So this is the original problem. And we are going to multiply both sides of the equation, so both the numerator and the denominator. Ooh, I don't want to draw that line, though, because it makes it look like division, and we're not doing division. So multiply the numerator and the denominator by the issue. The issue is we can't have the square root of 5 in the denominator. You are not allowed to have any radicals or square roots in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation, both the top and the bottom, by the square root of 5. So 2 gets multiplied by the square root of 5 because that's on the top, and the square root of 5 gets multiplied by the square root of 5. If you remember, you have learned this before from me, but again, I'm teaching it as if it's the first thing you've seen, the first time you've seen this. When you multiply 2 square roots by each other, so the square root, let me erase this highlighting right here. When you multiply 2 square roots by each other, the 2 square roots cancel out. They cancel each other out, and you are just left with the number that's underneath, just one of them. And then when we're multiplying these numbers, if whatever on the outside multiplies by whatever's on the outside, and whatever is underneath the radical gets multiplied by anything underneath the radical. We have one number on the outside, meaning it's outside of the radical, and one number underneath the radical. So we can't simplify those, so we just write them right next to each other. So 2 times the square root of 5, we're just going to write them right next to each other. Number 4 and 5 are examples where we multiply them. Number 4 and 5 are examples of the other ways. So I will show you those, but this is the answer. I'm going to do 5 examples with you. So if you're a little confused on example 1, that's totally fine because we're going to do a couple more. So I'm just going to draw a line showing that that's where that work was. Number 2, we're going to start these problems the same way. So I'm going to write 9 divided by the square root of 3. And I hope you notice that the issue is the square root of 3 is in the bottom here, and we don't want that to happen. So we need to multiply both sides of the equation by the issue. And the issue is the square root of 3. So we're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3. And then remember, when you multiply 2 square roots that are exactly the same, so the square root of 3 is exactly the same as the square root of 3, those square roots cancel each other out. And I am just left with the number underneath the radical. So I'm just left with the 3. And then I have the 9. The 9 is outside of the radical, and the 3 over here is under, oops, I did not mean to do that. The 3 underneath is inside the radical. So we cannot simplify them, so we're just going to write them next to each other. So I have 9 times the square root of 3. And then one last thing is you always want to ask yourself, can you simplify the numbers that are on the outside? Can I simplify 9 divided by 3? So in your calculator, you can use your phone, the calculator on your computer. Ask yourself, what is 9 divided by 3? And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So I'm going to keep the 3 on the top, and then the 3 on the bottom goes away. So 9 divided by 3 is equal to 3 times the square root of 3. And that is my answer. It's the same thing. I just wrote it twice. In this problem over here, you notice that we had 2 on the outside and 5 on the bottom. You can, you either know off the top of your head, or you can use your calculator that 2 over 5 doesn't simplify to anything, so you can just keep it as that. And so we just left 2 over 5, but we can reduce 9 over 3 to 3 times the square root of 3. I'm going to erase this one right here, though. It is down here so that I have more room. So let me get us some more room for this problem. Again, we're going to do another problem just like this. So we have 2 times the square root of 6. And we need to multiply, we need to notice and multiply it by the issue. The issue is the square root of 6. The square root of 6 cannot be in the denominator, excuse me. And so I'm going to multiply both sides. I'm sorry, I don't know why this keeps moving. Let me move this. I'm going to multiply. Okay, that's just not going to work then. 2 times the square root of 6. I'm going to multiply it by the issue. And the issue is the square root of 6. So I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 6. And, sorry, I don't know why this got so sloppy. And so remember, we're going to take care of the denominator first. Whenever you multiply two square roots and they are exactly the same number, those square roots cancel each other out, and I'm just left with the number that's on the bottom. So the number that was on the bottom is 6. And then this 2 right here is on the outside of the radical, and this 6 right here is on the inside of the radical, meaning it's underneath. So I can't combine those, so I just write them right next to each other. 2 times the square root of 6. And we need to ask ourselves, can this 2 on the outside and this 6 on the outside simplify? Does 2 over 6 simplify? And it does. It simplifies to 1 over 3. So I'm going to keep the 1 times the square root of 6 divided by 3. I simplified 2 over 6. So you can check your calculator. You can Google a simplifying calculator. You can Google, it does 2 over 6 simplify. That's up to you. So that's my answer. At any point in time, if you have a question, please pause it and ask me, say, hey, Miss Bishop, at 1 minute and 30 seconds, you said this. Can you help me on that? And I will happily help you. Number 4 and 5 are a little different, but we're still going to start the problems exactly the same. So I have 3 times the square root of 5 times the square root, or divided by the square root of 3. So we still start these problems exactly the same. Let's notice the issue. The issue is the square root of 3 is in the bottom, and we need to get that out of the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my fraction by the issue. The issue is the square root of 3, and we're going to take care of this the same way. Remember, we're going to take care of the denominator first. I have 2 square roots of exactly the same number, so this radicals cancel, and I am just left with the number that's underneath. So my denominator is just going to have 3. And then we are now going to multiply the numbers outside of the radical. The numbers outside the radicals go together, so there's only 3 outside the radical. And then we multiply the numbers underneath the radicals together. So notice I have square root of 5 and the square root of 3. They are both under a square root sign, so I'm going to multiply both of them underneath the square root sign. And then clean it up. I have 3 times the square root. 5 times 3 is 15, so I'm going to clean that up. Divided by 3. Okay, and then I am going to simplify. I'm going to ask myself, do these 2 numbers outside simplify at all? And they do simplify. 3 divided by 3 is just 1. So 1 times the square root of 15. And if you don't want to put the 1, you don't have to. Okay, if that confused you, we have one more to do. If you're still confused after this video, please reach out to me. We can video chat if you'd like. I can message you on Remind, but let's do this last one. So this one over here, I have 2 times the square root of 7 divided by the square root of 2. And again, I'm going to notice the issue. The issue is the square root in the bottom. And so I'm going to multiply both sides of the fraction by the square root of 2. Okay, and then remember I have 2 numbers in the denominator that are exactly the same. They're the same exact square root. And so those cancel each other out, and I am just left with the number underneath the radical, which is 2. And then on top, I multiply all numbers outside of the radicals together. So remember, notice only 2 is outside this radical. Oops, I don't know where that 2 went. That's my bad. And I am going to multiply the numbers underneath the radical together. So I have square root of 7 and the square root of 2. They are both under radicals, so I can combine them. So I put them under the same radical and I multiply them. And then I have 7 times 2. I'm going to clean up my answer down here. So I still have that 2. And then the square, I have 7 times 2. So 7 times 2 is 14. And then divided by the square root, or divided by 2. And then you need to ask yourself, do these 2 numbers simplify? And yes, they do simplify. They simplify to just 1 again. So I just have the square root of 14. And those are my answers. So now that you've watched these 3, hopefully you write these on a piece of paper. You will need to know how to do this for next week. So keep these in a safe spot because I will reference it. And now please check the other document for your 3 questions that you are going to have for homework. It's 3 questions. You can definitely do it, I promise. But please message me if you have any questions. This homework will be due Monday, and so the Monday at 3 o'clock. And so you have lots of time to do it. But please actually be trying it because I will be checking it for accuracy. But let me know. I promise I'm here to help you. Take care, and thank you for doing